The black vote is the foundation of the Democratic Party. The foundation. Now, when we say foundation, what we mean is it is the basis upon which an edifice rests. It is the solid underpinning that gives strength and integrity and stability to whatever it is holding up. But that's not how the white supremacists in the Democratic Party see it. As far as they're concerned, when you say foundation, that means black folks are the solid ground under their feet. That's how they see it. We're underneath their feet for them to walk all over us. And for a while, too dang long, you had a lot of black people who were content to be in that position, to be a doormat. And it wouldn't have mattered if it was the Democrats or the Republicans, just long as it happens to be some white supremacists who are giving some attention. Some Negroes are so lowly. But now there's a generation, in fact, two generations, Generation X and the Millennials, who are making it very clear those days are over. We are not asking for the respect that we are due. We are taking that respect, and we are punishing those who fail to show that respect. In the last 24 hours, probably less than 24 hours, you've had Pete Buttigieg and you've had Tom Steyer and Amy Klobuchar, who have all thrown in the towel. Now, Amy Klobuchar and Tom Steyer were never in it. We'll get to Tom Steyer a little bit later on. Amy Klobuchar, she basically was trying to figure out if there was some way to raise her profile. There wasn't. But of the three also-rans who had to pack it in the last 24 hours, Pete Buttigieg happens to be the one who is the most noteworthy and the least surprising of the three, truth be told. No matter how little mention the white media gives to it, for most of the election coverage, the white media knows that they're full of crap when it comes to black voters. They're trying to dictate our opinion to us. And they figured that the old tried and true tactic of, if we can just get some Negro into the frame of the photo, standing beside whomever our white supremacist stalking horse is, and get some Negro who gives them thumbs up, while the rest of these little Negroes, they'll go right along with it. It's like Jason Black said, whenever some white supremacist is trying to sell you up the river, the oldest trick in the book is to get one of your own to do it. But that doesn't seem to be as effective as it was in the past. In fact, it doesn't seem to be very effective at all. You see, the white media always changes their reporting right before we vote. Or at the very least, they try to white-splain away the results after the election. That's what they've been doing for the last 4 years now. But the white media realizes they're not the ones who drive the message. And their black bootlicks don't either. They don't have the pulse of the black street, especially not young black people. We, the black media, we're the ones who drive that particular discussion. Black people know exactly what it is that we need, but we've allowed white political tricksters and their black bootlicks to tell us that we need everything except tangibles. And when everyone else is getting resources, we let them get away with some line of crap about how everybody else is deserving of it. Everybody else has earned it, even if they just arrived on a boat yesterday. Well, they earned these resources. Or they would put the resources to better use. How the hell would you know you've never actually had black folks with resources to use? You see, everybody else can get free money simply for being immigrants, even if they come from countries on the terror watch list. But the black people who built this country are subjected to relentless, targeted economic starvation. The condition that we are in didn't happen by accident. It wasn't the result of any individual failing on your part, or even a group failing on our part as a people. This was engineered. Our current condition was made to happen. This has been inflicted upon us and continues to be re-inflicted upon us every single day. Our position as an underclass, that position has to be reinforced on a daily basis. Now, we know this is the reality, but we've let our enemies and their black flunkies blame us for what they did. The most powerless people in the society, you can't really blame us for any sort of social condition. We don't have the power to do anything. We let others tell us that we should be ashamed to demand anything from the country that we built, ashamed to demand our share of the wealth that we created. People came from all over the world and have eaten off of the wealth that we built, but there's always some excuse, some bald-faced lie for why the people who generated all of this wealth shouldn't get any of it. This country is run and operates in the interests of thieves. Well, we're going to bully the white supremacists. That's what we're going to do. I want you to get into the habit of bullying the white supremacists. This country will be bullied into being accustomed to seeing the people who built this country live off the fat of the land. Oh, we know it's going to be a tough transition for them to make, but we're not asking them to. We're telling them they're going to. And this is not a matter of trying to cajole them or coerce them. We're going to straight up bully them. Now, because we've allowed the bad guys to have it all their own way for so long, because we've played the fool for so long, they're going to resist these changes that we're imposing on them. At least in the beginning. They'll scoff. Then they'll raise hell and say it ain't no fair. They'll try to change the subject. They'll try to tell us that our concerns are no different and hence no more important than anyone else's, so we shouldn't be making any demands. When Pete Buttigieg said that being gay meant that he could understand black people, what he was doing was saying that he had been through slavery. Apparently, Pete Buttigieg had been through Jim Crow, and he had been through lynchings and church bombings and job discrimination and redlining, the whole 9 yards, right? Except the truth is, he hadn't been through any of those things. No people in the LGBT community had, except for the black LGBTers. And they were not in that position because of their sexuality. It was because of the color of their skin. See, this was just another white supremacist trying to give himself permission to dismiss our concerns and to tell us that we should sit on our hands while he ignores us because he's gay and that's no different than being black. So anti-black racism is no big deal because that's what's left unsaid. When he tries to claim why I know what you people have been through, he's trying to say that he's on the same level as us and that he is an authority and hence he has some sort of legitimacy to dismiss our concerns because that's where he's going with it. He's not trying to compare himself to us for the sake of saying, man, I know exactly what you're going through and you guys should have tangibles just like the gays do. That's not where he's coming from. It's always a matter of, well, you should vote for me because I told you that I empathize with you. I empathize with you, so you should hand me the presidency. Okay, well, what are we as black people getting for all of this empathy? Well, you get to bask in the warm glow of me being president. Because after all, it's no different than you. Why, this is a vicarious victory for you. Nah, that whole vicarious victory thing was played out in 2008. We had a vicarious victory through Barack Obama. We damn sure ain't going down that road again. The white media for the longest time have been pointing out that Pete Buttigieg just wasn't able to get any traction with the black vote. And they weren't willing to say what the real reason was. They were nibbling around the edges, hoping that maybe he could take some photo ops with some black folks and that would solve his image problem. To them, this was a PR problem. Now, if by PR, if what they meant was policies and racism, then they were right. He definitely had a huge PR problem. Black folks came to him and told him, this is what you're going to have to do if you expect to get the black vote. And he's trying to talk around our interest, yucking it up with the breakfast schlubs, talking about what kind of chicken he likes to eat. Well, he saw that Charlemagne the Fraud and DJ Penis Envy, they don't have the pulse of the black street. All that shucking and jiving and yucking it up, how much traction did you get for that, Pete? Yeah, you see, the usual suspects you keep going to, they're not the ones who are going to be able to pull that black vote. Because we understand that if the white media gave you a job, it's because you're not going to rock the boat. And black folks want some black voices out here who are going to tear things up. Pete Buttigieg made it a habit to keep dismissing black people's interests. To keep glossing it over and making it clear that, well, you know, do I really need the black vote? The guy was being dismissive of us. He damn sure was not being attentive to us. Apparently, as far as he was concerned, well, black people's interest, listening to black people, that's no big deal. Well, he just found out the hard way that ignoring black interest is a big deal. And you do so at your peril. Earlier today, I posted a link to a story on The Atlantic, an article by Peter Beinart, who was pointing out what it was that destroyed Pete Buttigieg's candidacy. He was doomed before he even began, and he's the one who sank himself. Nobody sank Pete Buttigieg except for him. But they were white media and the Buttigieg campaign. They were bringing out all these lies. They were bringing out all of these obfuscations, anything that it took to not have to admit to the reality that the black vote was in the driver's seat. Black people understand exactly the political power that we wield, and we're wielding it for our own benefit. We are punishing those who do not do what we say. We're not trying to get acceptance. We're not trying to get approval. We are here for power, and we don't give a damn who doesn't like it. In fact, if you don't like it, that makes us feel even better, because for 500 years we ain't been liking it. So now you get to see what it's like to be us. Now, one of the things that the Atlantic piece pointed out was that it is now conventional wisdom that Democratic candidates cannot and should not win their party's nomination without demonstrating significant African American support. Now, you think about that. This is in the Atlantic here. This isn't in Bob's Country Almanac somewhere. This is in the Atlantic, where they're pointing out that it is now conventional wisdom that a candidate cannot get the party nomination without significant African American support. Notice that. It doesn't say without black and brown support. It doesn't say without people of color. It doesn't say without minorities. It says without African American support. There you have it. Yeah, the white media has been trying to talk around it because they wanted to see if they could get us off of that talking point. Well, can we get them to stop saying black? We'll say people of color and see if they fall for it. We didn't fall for it. So now it's a matter of, yep, you can go ahead and keep hiding your head in the sand if you want. That'll make it easier for us to put our foot up your behinds, and that's exactly what we've been doing. The road to the White House runs squarely through the black community, and you better believe that the traffic guard at the intersection is going to be the black media. It damn sure ain't going to be Charlemagne the Fraud. It ain't going to be Joy Reid. It ain't going to be any other hand-picked white media sock puppets. That's why this is happening. Pete Buttigieg thought to himself that he could get away with something, and he found out the hard way that he got away with absolutely nothing. And the white media is having to admit, yep, this happened specifically because of the black vote. Didn't happen because of no brown vote. You can't be shoehorning anybody else into this one. And this happens to be a frightening confession for them to make, because once you admit that the black vote denied a white candidate the presidency, and it was the black vote that denied it to him, then it becomes a matter of you can no longer escape having to ask, well, what is it that we're going to need to get that black vote? Because right now what they're trying to do is they're trying to tiptoe around it. They're trying to figure out, how do we keep from saying tangibles? Oh, you can go ahead and say racial justice all day long, because as far as you're concerned, it's a matter of, well, if we're just a little bit nicer to the Negroes, no, you can keep your freaking racial justice. This is all about economics. How do you spell racial justice? M-O-N-E-Y. But that didn't come up in Mr. Beinart's piece. So you can see that even while he's admitting to the truth, he's trying the old white supremacist Jedi mind trick. Make you think that they're saying the same thing you are when they're actually trying to mislead you away from what the real issue is. Later on in the piece, they write that African American leaders who the Buttigieg campaign claimed had endorsed his Douglas plan actually had not. So what a surprise. The guy was sitting here claiming he had black support that he didn't have. And the white media, by the way, signal boosted all of that, trying to claim that there were black folks who were supporting the Buttigieg campaign, just like they tried with Bloomberg, just like they've been trying to do with Biden and Bernie the bigot. So even the clowns whose campaigns are on life support, the white media's claim that they got all this black support when the truth is they don't. But of course, showing his utter contempt for the black electorate, Buttigieg was saying that homophobia was the reason that he was failing to get black support. Now, he didn't come to the black community and start talking about any tangibles. He didn't show up and say, here's my plan for how we're going to distribute the $16 trillion that you're going to get. Here's how the installments are going to work. That's all I want to hear. I want to hear, how are these installments going to work? Is it going to be annually? Is it going to be monthly? What are we doing here? How are these disbursements going to work? That's the only thing you got to tell me about. I don't want to hear about your freaking Douglas plan. We already got a plan to rejuvenate and to revitalize the black community. It's called reparations. We already know what the initial package is going to be. The stimulus package is going to be $16 trillion in back pay. And all I want to hear is when the disbursements are going to start. That's all you got to tell me. I don't need to hear the rest of that nonsense because you're not going to tell me what it's going to be. We're going to tell you how it's going to be. And he didn't come up to us and say the policies that we demanded. And that's the thing. That's how it works, family. This is how you get the bastards to move. This is how you get the bastards to crack. You don't listen to what the hell it is he says. You tell him, whoa, you need to be keeping your mouth shut and listening to us. You're a public servant, so you're going to serve. And servants don't talk. They listen. And since we are your boss and you're the public servant, we're certainly the public, we're going to tell you what it is that we want, and you're going to do it. That's how this works. He ain't got to say a doggone word. In fact, if he's talking, he's saying too much. He's out of line if he's talking. Now, there's been a lot of mention in recent weeks about how there's just been this real uptick, this heightened intensity, just this increasing tempo of the black community's homophobic, the black community's transphobic. They've been trying to point that at black people in particular. Now, if you look and see where the violence and the vitriol against the LGBT community has been coming from, it's been coming from the white community, not the black one. And Pete Buttigieg made it very clear that he doesn't care how many LGBT people that are killed by the dominant society. What he's concerned about is whether or not the black community is doing as he says. And if you don't, well, you must be homophobic. Could it have anything to do with the fact that you're not offering us anything? I offered you plenty. I offered you plenty of empathy. Okay, well, in that case, then, Buttigieg, we give you plenty of empathy. On dropping out of the campaign, you got plenty of empathy. Don't worry about that presidency thing. You don't need that presidency thing. We have decided that you have our empathy as we go and find somebody else who's going to do what we say, as we send you back to Fort Hook, Indiana, where the hell he crawled out of, South Bend in the Elbow or Bent Knee, Indiana, and you can go back there and you can bask in the warm glow of our empathy. Why, Pete, we empathize with you. We're just not going to vote for you. That's something that he wasn't used to, but he's getting used to it now. And what he's understanding is the black community, that black vote is serious business. And if you think what you're going to do is that you're going to decide that you're going to try to shame the black community because you didn't do for us what you have done for every other group that you've talked to, you didn't talk about the tangibles and you did not pledge the tangibles you were going to bring us, you got no one to blame but yourself. Pete Buttigieg didn't want to be president. That's the reason why he's not going to be president. He didn't really want to be president. Instead of him looking at the political landscape the way that it is today and adjusting to it and going, hey, black folks, the game was bound to run out sooner or later. Sooner or later, black folks were going to get off that treadmill. And when they did, the bill was going to come due with interest. I better have a plan for how we going to pay this bill. Instead, he decided, let's go ahead and see if we can dial them in for another 4 to 8 years of sitting on their hands and running in circles. And what he found out was it's a brand new day. That's what happened to Pete Buttigieg. And finally, The Atlantic ended by pointing out that it's the increased prominence of black voters that hurt Buttigieg. Black voters. Not black and brown. Not people of color. Not minorities. But black voters. You know, all the people who like to talk about we need to have a coalition, like the A-dunce crowd. We need to have allies and be united with forget it. What we need to do is to get on code. You start organizing the black vote, you'll find very quickly, as we've been telling you for over a decade now, you don't need friends. You got something better than friends. You got family. And when we start acting as an organized voting bloc, what happens is all that other stuff, all the distractions, the white media loves to have us running around like chickens with our heads cut off, chasing all sorts of red herrings. And black people are perpetually have an inferiority complex that they keep indulging all the time. We keep indulging this inferiority complex instead of getting past it. And they know that all they got to do is say, why, here's some people over here who'll like you little niggers. And black folks are like, ooh, will you be my friend? And what's happening is we're sitting here going, you know what? To hell with friends. Friendship is highly overrated. Power, on the other hand, well, that never gets old. And what's happening is once we abandon this codependent delusion of friends and allies and unity and alliances, which, by the way, is the language of the defeated, it's the language of the weak. Now that we are speaking the language of power, which is that we are going to unify and solidify our ranks, discipline our ranks, and start bullying the bad guys. Now, all of a sudden, we're teaching the bastards to take us seriously. And it's not a matter of we're looking for their approval or for them to say, oh, we take you seriously. It's a matter of that which they cannot defeat, they have no choice but to accept. So you see what's happening here. Buttigieg has been shown the door, and it was the black vote that showed it to him. As Beinart wrote, white candidates cannot easily brush off African American concerns. But I want you to understand, the white media did not write this Atlantic piece as some means of validating black political clout. First of all, we don't need them to validate our clout. We've always known it. We just haven't acted on it. Secondly, keep in mind, Beinart is not doing this for the sake of trying to show that you need to do what black people say. Instead, it's a matter of the old white supremacist con game, which is they will gladly acknowledge the buying power of China. They will gladly acknowledge the buying power of Latinos. They will gladly acknowledge the buying power of women, especially black women, if it's for the sake of getting you to buy something they want to sell you. They have no problem flattering those who they intend to manipulate and intend to use. White supremacy has always liked to flatter, because white supremacy always loves a good joke, especially a cruel one, at your expense. So while they're busy flattering you, you thinking that they like you so much. Meanwhile, they're busy laughing up their sleeve. They're like, look at this rube. He actually thinks he's important. Don't let the white media pull this con game on you. Peter Beinart is not your friend. You see, the white media thinks that by acknowledging the power of the black vote, they're going to con us into thinking that we'll lose our power if we don't vote for one of the remaining scumbags. That's the reason why Beinart writes, in South Carolina, Biden did both, and by both it means overcoming past transgressions, etc. Apparently, he's got the black vote sewn up. See, Biden was able to overcome his past. No, he wasn't. It was a matter of the other candidates, the black community had already decided that Steyer and Klobuchar and Warren and Buttigieg, these clowns were not going to get the black vote. That decision had already been made. For the few black folks who were still out there voting, they had already written these clowns off 6 months ago. Biden and Bernie the bigot are pretty much the only two standouts left. So Beinart's acting like, Biden overcame his transgressions. No, it's just a matter of he has more name recognition, and that will get him a little bit farther than the average, but it's not going to get him to the White House. But that's the narrative that Beinart and the Atlantic and the white media are trying to manufacture, which is, sure. The black community had problems with Buttigieg, but you know what? They clearly don't have a problem with Biden. Oh, they love Biden. See, Buttigieg made some mistakes. He had some slip-ups, a couple of missteps. And, the black community is soured on him, but they love Biden. Oh, they're sweet on Biden. That's the narrative that they're trying to manufacture, which is, and notice the narrative never includes Biden is promising the black community tangibles. Biden has stepped up with a real plan for how to disperse that $16 trillion in reparations money. Notice how that's not the narrative. Instead, the narrative is that black folks just love Biden. Doesn't say that Biden's going to do anything. It never points out what Biden has promised that apparently black people are so enthused and so happy about. That's the whole point. See how the word judo works? Oh, black people were angry that Pete Buttigieg took the side of the police when black people were murdered, and that he dismissed black concerns, and that he was condescending toward the black community. Oh, yeah, they'll go ahead and say that. And then in the end, oh, you got to take that black vote seriously, like Biden did. And yeah, black folks are going to turn off the vote for Biden without telling you what the hell Biden's going to do. Understand that. We already know that by withholding our vote, we can deny the nomination to all but one of the candidates. One of these idiots will get it simply by default, because somebody's got to. But we must make it clear to the whole country that we can deny the entire political party the White House by withholding our vote. We can make fully 1/2 of America's political landscape completely and thoroughly irrelevant. We have the power to do that arbitrarily as a group, so long as we hang together. When half of a duopoly fails to carry out their function because of us, then we have effectively chopped off one of the political arms of white supremacy. We've amputated one of the left hand of white supremacy's political body. We've amputated it. But understand, this is not about getting the white media to acknowledge our political clout. Beinart's not telling us anything we don't already know. His attempts to flatter or to otherwise white-splain or to try to make it seem like, whoa, white supremacy's got it all under control, why we foresaw all of this, when the truth of the matter is they were as much in the dark as anyone else, because they live in their own little bubble and they believe their own press. We're not interested in whether or not the white media validates us. This ain't about validation from white supremacy. This is about driving tangibles down the bastards' throats and making them cough up the money they owe us with interest. We will not allow them to equate us to any other group, because we recognize that that's just setting the stage for telling us that if we get something, then everybody else has to get something too, and we're not going to let them perpetuate the wealth gap between black people and everyone else anymore. We're going to bully the bastards into getting used to seeing us balance the scales. They took everything from our side of the scales. Now we're taking it back. And they can grumble and holler and whine and complain all they want. White supremacists are real good for throwing temper tantrums. We don't care. People have become accustomed. They become comfortable watching us getting screwed over. And to them, there's something wrong with the world whenever we're not. If black folks ain't getting screwed over, well, there's something wrong here. We need to do something. Some policies need to be changed. Somebody needs to do something. We are forcing black back into the political discourse. And next, we're going to force black tangibles into the political debates. This should be top of mind and front of policy for both of the major parties. The question is not who's got a black agenda, it's who's going to cut the check for the $16 trillion that we're owed. And beyond that, to ensure the economic resources that we've earned and require on account of being citizens. We got to be very specific about what it is that we expect to be done, what it is that we require. Our demands must be specific. We have to be very careful using phrases like black agenda as if that's what we want. Because with black agenda, the white supremacists can and have tried to redefine that as being money for the political whores at the HBCUs. In other words, a giveaway to the boule bootlicks who have been white supremacy's agents in our community. But when you come up the middle and say who's going to cut our check, there's no way to redefine that. Bernie the bigot sure couldn't. When he was on The View, he was asked about reparations and he tried to play dumb. Nobody's told me what reparations are. Then Sonny Hostin said it means money. All of a sudden he understood exactly what reparations are. And he said no. And that's fine. We need to be completely and thoroughly unambiguous about where everybody stands. We don't need to be giving the white supremacists any cover to try to pretend as if, well, I said reparations, and well, reparations can be a lot of things. No, reparations can be only one thing and one thing only. Money. Cut the check. And that doesn't mean a check for an HBCU. That means put it in my pocket. You want this black vote, you're going to have to pay for it. See, the white supremacists, they're real slick. They can talk around the phrase black agenda. They can try to redefine it or try to act like they don't know what it means. They can pretend not to understand that. But when you say cut the check, ain't no way around that. That's what Elizabeth Warren did. She was told, hey, when you going to cut the check? She didn't say, I don't know what cut the check means. She didn't say that she didn't understand what it meant. Instead, she was like, cut the check for what? In other words, you niggers don't deserve anything. And there's another clown who's finding that she just can't get any traction with the black vote. Right now, the narrative is, oh, well, Biden, he's soaking up that black vote. Oh, the black vote's coming home to Uncle Joe. It's because of Barack Obama. Barack Obama's the reason why the black vote's coming to Biden, when the truth of the matter is, as I pointed out, he's actually getting no more support than Hillary got 4 years ago, and in many ways he's actually getting less. I've told you before, and I will continue to say, that black empowerment will not have come into its own until we first show that we can exercise power over white people. And when you have white political candidates who are getting cut off at the knees because of our work, because we decided you did not do as we say, you cannot become president, that's precisely what we need to be doing. That's precisely the level of political discipline and focus that we need to have. We got to show everybody that we are absolutely relentless when it comes to the pursuit of our power. And what you see happening with Buttigieg is the same thing going on with Bloomberg. He's trying to buy his way into the White House. He saw what happened to Kamala Harris in those early debates, and he already knew that the black community couldn't stand him, especially up north. And what he was hoping was that if he parachutes into the race halfway through the primary, he can bypass most of those debates. He's thinking, well, I'll at least bypass some of those tough questions, because he saw what happened to the fools who didn't bypass them, and that's what he thought he was going to do. He was trying to figure out, how do I jump into this afterwards? How do I limit the number of uncomfortable questions about how I've attacked the black community? Hopefully I can have enough time to redefine myself and reinvent myself and take some photo ops with some of these dumb Negroes, and hopefully I'll fly under the radar. If I can just go through the process so quickly that they just don't have time to check me. They don't have time to vet me, and they don't have time to remind everybody of who I am and what I've done. And what he found was he couldn't. He found that the black media was waiting on him. Oh, the white media may not have mentioned Bloomberg's myriad sins against the black community, but the black media had kept all of his anti-black crimes against us in the black public's ears. We made sure that our people remembered what stop and frisk is and who its biggest cheerleader and proponent was. We made Bloomberg's name synonymous with that. The white media was trying to lie and say that Bloomberg was getting support while the black community didn't care about stop and frisk. In spite of that, he's getting black support. And then, as I pointed out to you, when they said black support, who are they talking about? Black preachers. Well, you see what happened just this last weekend when he went to Brown Chapel AME Church in Selma. He was there for a photo op because some pork chop preacher let him in the door. And the black congregants turned their backs on him. Well, how's that for a photo op? Oh, he got an unforgettable photo, all right. He was sitting there thinking, this is going to be a photo that no one will ever forget. Yeah, no one's going to forget this photo for all the wrong reasons. Yeah, it seems Bloomberg's finding that black people are every bit as relentless about sinking his campaign as he was about putting us in prison. He figured that once he got out of New York and went way down south, then the black folks wouldn't be so hostile towards him because, well, stop and frisk. I mean, it's not like that's a policy in Alabama, except it is a policy in Alabama. It's a policy in Arizona and in California and North Dakota and in Florida and all points in between. Bloomberg was not going to think to himself that once he gets outside of New York, well, stop and frisk is more of a New York issue. Once I get outside of New York, especially if I go down south, why, I'll have those corn-pone country Negroes eating out of my hand. That's what he thought. Well, I'll go ahead and take some photo ops and nobody will ask me about stop and frisk because after all, who down south knows anything about stop and frisk? It's not like they got family members in New York, right? Right? As with practically everything else, Bloomberg was wrong. He thinks he can tell us what his record is, and he's finding out that he can't. We've decided for ourselves who and what Michael Bloomberg is. His $61 billion have been neutralized by the black media. That old game of having some pork chop preacher say, Michael Bloomberg is redeemed, that wouldn't work. That ain't gonna work. These old, musty, dusty pulpit pimps, they can't tell this generation what to think. And by the way, if you're a member of Brown Chapel AME, you need to get that pastor out of there. And if the bastard won't leave, if the deacons refuse to force him out, then you leave. That pastor is not a pastor at all. He is acting as a traitor. He is acting as a turncoat. He is an accessory to an anti-black crime after the fact. Michael Bloomberg committed a mountain of sins against the black community. And whoever that pork chop preacher is, he's trying to help him get away with it. You had a church of God. You had a house of God being used to host a demonic anti-black racist. This is total blasphemy. It's a disgrace that anyone in that church didn't turn their backs on him. The entire congregation should have turned their backs, or better yet, walk out. You see, as black people, we can't afford to play footsie with the white supremacists. We can't afford to tolerate any buck-dancing clowns who are still looking for white media attention and who think it's okay to be cordial and meek in the face of our enemies. It is not some victimless crime when you allow yourself to be used as a backdrop for white supremacists, whether it be Donald Trump or Michael Bloomberg. Just a couple of weeks ago, the white media was trying to claim that Michael Bloomberg's black support was growing despite stop and frisk. And I told you that even they knew that was a complete lie. They just wanted to see if it would have any traction. Well, it didn't. The law of diminishing returns is kicking in for the white political establishment. The tried and true strategy of getting their bought and paid for black preachers and politicians to endorse them, it's not as effective as it was before. And if all of their scare talk about Trump fails to galvanize the black vote, then they know they're facing a real problem. The usual bag of tricks just isn't working like it used to, and the white media has been forced to acknowledge this. But remember, the white media, they're the masters of political judo and using their opponent's momentum against them. If you have the momentum and they're not able to stop you, then they're not going to wear themselves out trying. Instead, they'll attempt to misdirect you into going into another direction, away from your goal. But this misdirection begins when you make the mistake of listening to them and actually thinking that they're doing something other than lying. If the white supremacists are running their mouths, if they're talking to you, it's because either they're lying to you or they're setting up a lie. You think that they're negotiating or otherwise having a dialogue, but in reality, they're just trying the white supremacist Jedi mind trick. So please don't go getting a big head because the white media admits what we already know. That it was black voters, specifically black voters, who brought down Pete Buttigieg. We don't gauge our effectiveness by whether or not the white media mentions us. That's what clowns like A-dunce do. I'm only mentioning this in passing to let you know that the bad guys fully understand what happened in South Carolina. And notice how none of them mentions the utter and complete ineffectiveness of their black political tools. None of them points out that, well, Pete Buttigieg did have some black support, but it just wasn't enough. They don't mention that. Because to admit to the failure of the black political tools also means admitting to the failure of the white political powers that tried to utilize them. We must reject not only the white supremacists, but also the black bootlicks who try to present us to our enemies as mindless sheep. When you see the white media or politicians going up to some preacher or politician, that's because that's a bootlick who's on their payroll. That's a Negro who's on the side of white supremacy because they're damn sure not on ours. For too long, we've allowed these self-interested traitors to conspire and collaborate with white supremacy and to do it right in front of us. It's time that we started charging a price for this kind of betrayal. If the preacher wants to do his Bible comedy routine on Sundays, that's fine. But when he decides that he's going to tell us to support our enemies, then he has become one of our enemies. These pulpit punks, they know that they can't tell us how we should like Bloomberg or Biden, so instead they want us to sit still and help these racists manufacture some pictures for themselves or some video of them sitting in front of a black crowd. They're going to stand in front of us, and the white media will then take these images and begin telling lies that Bloomberg's got big black support. Why, take a look at this photograph. And black people don't care about stop and frisk because why? They're sitting politely in their churches and sitting there like zombies while he lies to their faces. And why? You can see the black community can't be too outraged why they're not doing anything. But now they're not able to pull that little con game. See, this is exactly what I mean when I talk about the hashtag crash their party. When I talk about being disruptive. They call themselves coming to you disrupt things. Don't let these bastards sit here, because most people are like sheep. They'll sit there even if they disagree. They won't say anything because most people are weak and meek. And the only thing that the weak are going to inherit is an early grave. So you don't be one of the weak and meek. You be one of the strong. This guy is an open enemy of black empowerment. You show him we ain't forgotten. That's how you put a spine into a largely spineless people. Make sure that the white media does not get away with their would-be photo op, because that's who it was for. The white media's job is social engineering. What that means is they ignore whatever the reality is, and they instead try to fabricate a narrative that suits their interests. So they'll take a picture or a little bit of audio totally out of context, and then they'll start repeating some pack of lies meant to deceive us. But they're losing their ability to dictate to us what is and what isn't. They understand now this black empowerment sphere, intelligent black society, the former slaves, we are rising. We're not some noisy minority. We never were. We are the black community. It's the bootlicks and traitors and the boule clowns. They're the fringe. And what's happening is we're making it very clear that they're the fringe. These guys, their effectiveness is being challenged right in the very places where they thought that they were strongest. You see, we are not desperate for white acceptance. We're not desperate for a pat on the head. We're not desperate to get acknowledgement from the white media, white politicians, or the white supremacists. Our purpose in this world is black empowerment, and we don't care who doesn't like it. And as the election wears on, it's going to become more and more difficult for the white media to ignore or otherwise gloss over the fact that the black vote is taking power in its own hands. We're not supporting any of these bastards, but we are using the election as a platform of our own in order to make sure everybody remembers when you have wronged the black community, this is the reason why you're not getting the black vote. And if you refuse to step up with our check, you ain't getting the black vote either. The most important thing we can be doing right now is reaching as many black people with the message of black electoral discipline as possible. That's how we really make the rubber meet the road. And by the way, haven't had much to say about Tom Steyer. First of all, that clown was never in it, but you notice how he was on stage dancing with some rapper. And of course, you've probably seen the video of Bernie the Bigot Sanders being given a boombox. And if you think that that was not some sort of stage photo op, you're a damn fool. When I saw that, I'm going, man, the cringe. Apparently, the people who used to work for Kamala Harris, they're working for Bernie the Bigot now. I guess they figured that dancing to Cardi B didn't work, so have him being given some boombox. Yeah, that'll get the black vote out. Yeah, the same way that it worked for Tom Steyer. Family, this is what we need to have happen. We need to make sure that as these bastards start getting picked off, we are the ones who let everybody know that happened because of the black vote. You are now feeling the righteous fury of the black community. They're finding out the hard way. This isn't election day. This is judgment day. And we're the ones doing the judging. So everybody who thought that they got away with something, Kamala Harris locking up black people and letting the cops kill black people with impunity, Pete Buttigieg doing the same thing, Mike Bloomberg doing the same thing, all of these fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools who thought to themselves that because they had the New York political machine behind them, or they had the California political machine behind them, or because they were independently wealthy, that apparently that meant the black vote couldn't touch them. They were untouchable, especially by the former slaves. Why, I don't have to take the black vote seriously. And all of them, they had no problem dismissing it as far as they were concerned. Oh, we got some Negro preachers and a couple of paid off politicians who are going to do our dirty work. They'll get the niggers in line because they always have. And what they're finding is that isn't happening. This is a shock to the white political system, and we're the ones administering the shock. And the white media is not going to shout us down either. Oh, they may have enormous resources, but the problem happens to be we're both competing to reach the same audience, the black community, and clearly we've got the inside track. So it doesn't matter how much money Bloomberg's got. It doesn't matter how many rappers that Bernie the bigot likes to run around with. And all you folks who thought that who were making excuses for Killer Mike, you feel real stupid about now, don't you? You should. But it doesn't matter if it's Buttigieg or Biden or whomever. The message that we're getting across to all of the apparatuses and operatives of white supremacy is one thing. You bastards may have gotten in the first word. You certainly may have gotten in the loudest word. But when it comes to a war of attrition, all that matters is who gets in the last word.